I am a professional educator, but this is not my topic. So,
Yes, it is.
so bear with me. We have a purpose statement for today, and our purpose is to marvel at God's continuing faithfulness to the people of promise. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to start with reading the key verse, and could we all read that together? That's Exodus 15:19. But the Israelites walked through the sea on dry ground. Okay, now let's recap where we were last week. Last week we were talking about Genesis, and it ended with Joseph's death. Okay, that's what we know. And we know that Joseph's last words were that, I've died here and you can bury me here, but please take my bones to the promised land. I do want to be buried in the promised land. So when you get there, come back and get my bones. Now we know also that Israel has a covenant with God. It's been a continuing covenant. And we're coming to a point of stress with that covenant. So we have this promise that you're going to be protected. God's going to protect you. So now we get to Exodus. And we start with Exodus with the idea of the sons of Israel who came to Egypt with Jacob. And then it lists all of the sons that came and their descendants. And there were approximately 70 of them that came with Jacob to Egypt. And of course, God's edict to them was, okay, there's 70 of you, but be fruitful and multiply. We're going to make a great nation of the 70 of you. So here we have the stage set. We have the stage set for some things that are going to change. And I put some Bibles in front of us, and what I would like is some people to help me with this. So if we could start by reading Exodus 1:1-7. And we're just going to kind of go through Exodus a little bit here. Carolyn, would you read 1:1-7?
These are the names of the sons of Israel who came to Egypt with Jacob, each with his household: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin, Dan and Naphtali, Gad and Asher. The total number of people born to Jacob was 70. Joseph was already in Egypt, and Joseph died, and all his brothers and that whole generation. But the Israelites were fruitful and prolific. They multiplied and grew exceedingly strong, so that the land was filled with them.
Okay, so that's through 1:7?
That's through 7.
Okay, can somebody else read 1:8?
8. 1:8?
Yes.
Oh, just 8?
The next verse, please.
Okay. Then eventually a new king came to the throne of Egypt who felt no obligation to the descendants of Joseph.
Okay, we have a new king. Things are going to change. This new king is not going to remember any of the stuff which happened with Joseph. Okay, it's been a long time. It's actually been 430 years. So the memories of how wonderful Joseph was and how he turned around the financial abilities of the community are completely forgotten. And the only thing really that the king knows is there are a lot of these Israelites and I'm scared of them. So now could I have somebody read 9-14? 9-14.
He said to his people, "Behold, the people of the sons of Israel are more and mightier than we. Come, let us deal wisely with them, or else they will multiply, and in the event of war they will also join themselves to those who hate us, and fight against us, and depart from the land." So they appointed taskmasters over them to afflict them with hard labor. And they built for Pharaoh storage cities, Pithom and Ramoth. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied, and the more they spread out, so that they were in dread of the sons of Israel. The Egyptians compelled the sons of Israel to labor rigorously, and they made their lives bitter with hard labor in mortar and bricks, and at all kinds of labor in the field, all their labors which they rigorously imposed on them.
Okay, so things have changed. This Pharaoh doesn't know Joseph's history, doesn't know why he should respect these people, appreciate these people, and so he makes their life miserable. And they probably started about here. This map says Zoa and Tanis is where they probably started. And you can see on the map here Ramses, which is not too far from that. I saw it a little bit earlier today. Ramses, which was one of the cities that they had built. You see it? Oh yeah, right there's Ramses. They built this city, and they spread out in this region, and they were slave labor. And I know some of the people have been to Egypt. Who's been to Egypt? Just Carol? Are you the only one? Okay, Don. You probably know some of the history of what actually happened and can see some of the construction that went on in this period. This was like 4,000 years ago. It's really hard for me to get my head around something that happened 4,000 years ago, you know, and we still are affected by it. But that's true. 4,000 years ago, approximately 4,000 years ago, these things happened. So at this point, what happened was the king, the Pharaoh, decided that he was going to do something to stop the power of the Israelites. And what he was going to do to stop it was he was going to kill all the male babies, stop the male babies from growing up. He would let the female children grow and survive, but the male babies were going to be killed. And at this point, Moses comes into play. And Moses, if you haven't read about this before, actually is the author of the first 5 books of the Bible. Or he's commonly attributed to be the author of the first 5 books of the Bible. So Moses is born, and there's an edict. And the edict is, we're going to kill all of these male children. And the midwives who were supposed to do it, there were 2 of them, which were actually named in the Bible. And they decided they were not going to kill these male children. They were going to find a way to save them. And so the story, of course, of Moses is a very famous story, which is the child was born, and he was taken to the river and put in the river in the bulrushes, where they knew that the Pharaoh's daughter came and bathed. And when the Pharaoh's daughter came, she saw the child, and she took it out of the water and named the baby Moses, because that word meant take out, to take out. She took it out of the water. And Moses' older sister, Miriam, was actually standing there, watched it happen, and said to the Pharaoh's daughter, I know someone who can nurse this child. Would you like me to help you help the child? And so she said yes, she would like that. And of course Miriam went back and got her mother, which was also Moses' mother, and brought Moses' mother to be the nursemaid to this child that they took out of the bulrushes. Well, that sets up the scenario that we have. This is a problem waiting to happen. Moses is actually raised by his mother in the Pharaoh's house. And he is taught to read and to write, and he has a lot more skills than the rest of the people in his ethnic group. And so he's there and he's watching all this stuff. He knows his ethnic background. He knows it on a feeling level because he's bonded with his mother, and he probably knows it because he looks different from the Egyptians. I don't know that for a fact, but I would suspect he looked a little different. So I have handed out a sheet for everybody, and it's a listing of some of the chapters in Exodus, chapter 2, 3, 4, 5. And these are the parts we're going to skip. We're not going to really talk about this. We're just going to kind of fast forward through it. But let me give you just a real quick summary of what happens in the chapters we're going to skip. First, in Exodus 2, it's the story of Moses from his birth to his marriage. So it's just a little bit of what happened to him during that period of time. In Exodus 3, it's the story of the burning bush. And Moses is called to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. So at this point, God's giving him the message, you have the power, you can free these people from the oppression, and that is going to be your role. Exodus 4, Moses says, no, I'm not the right person, I can't do it, find somebody else. I just can't do this, God. And then finally, in Exodus 5, Moses gets some help from God, and the The way they get help is there are a number of plagues that are brought down upon the Egyptians. And the plagues are the things that starts to soften the Pharaoh's heart about releasing the Israelites and allowing them to go to wherever the promised land was. He didn't know what that was, but he knew that he needed to let them go. And there were actually 10 plagues over a period of time, and the plagues got successively more serious and more devastating to the Egyptians, until finally his heart was softened, and he finally got to the point where he said, just take your people and go, get them out of here, because you are hurting the rest of our population, and we want you away from here. So now the thing that I want you to focus on at this point is they finally got freedom to go, and let's read Exodus 13:17 through 14:31. That's the story of the crossing of the sea. And while you do that, I'm going to get the pictures from the back. Somebody's going to read that? 14:13. Okay.
13, 17.
13 through 17.
Wait a minute, 14?
Yeah. 14. Hang on a second. 13, 17,
And 14, 31.
and 14:31. Who could read for us?
I'm looking for it.
You can't find 14.
Then I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians so that they will glory for myself. No.
What one is
Then I
that?
will harden the hearts of the Egyptians so that they will go in after them. And so I will gain glory for myself over Pharaoh and all his army, his chariots and his chariot drivers. All right, 14.
13 and 17.
Oh, I'm reading the wrong one.
Yeah, I've got it.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. When Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them by way of the land of the Philistines, although that was nearer. For God thought, if the people face war, they may change their minds and return to Egypt. So God led the people by the roundabout way of the wilderness towards the Red Sea. The Israelites went up out of the land of Egypt prepared for battle. And Moses took with him the bones of Joseph, who required a solemn oath of the Israelites, saying, God will surely take notice of you, and then you must carry my bones with you from here. Continue on?
Yes, keep going.
They set out from Succoth and camped at Etham on the edge of the wilderness.
Okay, so we're thinking that they're going like right here, right along here, okay? And when they get there, they get to the water, and these are the pictures of the water that I put out for people to look at. And what I want you to do is I want you to imagine that here you are, you finally got freedom from your oppression. Can you see it? You have freedom from your oppression.
Is it going to be better without lights or not? No? Yes?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, you've been told what to do, you've been made to do hard physical labor, and actually you've become strong because of it. Your bodies are very strong because of it, but you have been very oppressed. You finally get free, you're taking off, and you've got your children with you, you've got your wives with you, you've got any pets that you might have with you, and you're walking, and you're getting away from this terrible oppressor, and you reach the sea. Here's the sea. And you've got whatever baggage you're taking along. Now today we would have our roll behind suitcases or maybe a backpack or something like that. And you get to the sea and you go, oh my gosh, what are we going to do now? We've gotten away from the Pharaoh, but now we have this huge sea that we have to cross. How are we going to do this? What are we going to do? And so they start to get worried. And they say, Moses, did you just get us out of the Pharaoh's hand so we can die out here in the desert? What is going on? This is horrible. Things are worse than they were before. So, now the question for the class is, what would you do if you were in this situation? You're here at the water, you've escaped from a terrible situation, it's very oppressive, but you've hidden a roadblock. Things are just at a standstill. So what would you do?
Pray for a leader.
Pray for a leader.
Probably jump in the water.
Yeah, right.
Or you probably think, how did we get ourselves in this situation? Is it all worth it?
Yeah, maybe this is hopeless. Maybe the situation is just hopeless. There's nothing we could do. What else? What else?
Call the Army Corps of Engineers and ask for a pontoon bridge.
Help, help, help. Well, okay, who said call for a leader? Yeah, that's what they did. They called for a leader. They said, Moses, you got us here. Show some leadership. You know, tell us what we're supposed to do next. And so Moses says, oh, God, I need help. I just really don't know what to do at this point. And what do you think God says to him?
Go forward.
Go forward. That's right. Keep going. You can figure this out. You can figure this out. Well, Moses and his followers have the message that the chariots are following them. You know, they are coming. The Romans are behind them. You can't go back. There's only one way to go, and that's forward. Right? So he prays, and he finally says, we're going to figure this out. And God actually came to his rescue and made a cloud between him and the Egyptians that are following him. A cloud which was probably fog, so the Egyptians couldn't see him, and a pillar of fire. You know, and the scholars have a debate about that. Was that maybe a volcano that erupted, and, you know, because of that they couldn't see? Not clear. It's not clear. In the end, what happens is Moses raises his hand above the sea, and we think it's this sea right here, and the sea parts. And there's enough time for the Israelites to get across the water on dry land, and they get to the other side of the water, and then Moses says to God, okay, protect us, and the water floods back, and the Egyptians are not able to cross. They don't have that bridge of land anymore. And so they're all killed, the chariots are killed, and the people are free. They are free. Now, one of the commentators that I read made a point of saying the story of Exodus is not probably a historical account of what happened. But what it is it's how these people gave meaning to what happened to them in their life. They put a meaning around all of the obstacles that they faced, and God was there for them at this crisis moment. And of course, if the sea opened up and they were able to get across, and the Israelites were not able to get across, they knew it was God's work. That was bigger than what they could have done themselves. It was a miracle, and they knew that God's hand was there in this process, and that God was protecting them. And so any doubts that they had about them being chosen people of God were pretty much dispelled. God was definitely there for them. They were able then to get across and to be safe. So, next question. Have you ever had an experience where you felt delivered by God? Where things that were unexpected or unexplainable happened, and you were able to do something that you thought was impossible?
Well, when my husband died, I didn't think it was possible to go through it. But God lifted me up above the earth and walked me through it. And it was like everybody else was walking on the floor, and I was floating 2 feet above. And
Kind of an out-of-body experience. Okay, yes. And I can get through this. I can actually rise above the pain that I'm going through. Yes. I can relate to that. I am also a widow, for those who don't know that. Yes.
I was on an airplane once when one of the engines went out. There wasn't a thing I could do about it except pray a lot. And I think God spoke to the person sitting next to me that he was a pilot himself. He says, "Don't worry, the guy flying this airplane is a former pilot. He'll get us back okay." But I have to admit, I did pray a lot. And just a little trivia fact, my wife Sue is not very old, but she was very well acquainted with Moses. She put a wristband around his wrist.
4,000 years old.
That's pretty good for that age.
You're doing well, Sue.
You know, I think too often, sometimes we get through tragedies, et cetera, it's too easy to give credit to maybe ourselves or people around, and sometimes we forget to give God, that God was behind that strength that we found after certain tragedies and so forth. We just kind of forget, no, it wasn't just your intestinal fortitude, it was a higher being there.
Right.
The
Yeah.
landing on the Hudson River of that airplane, imagine how they felt when they
solid.
came down
Yes.
in
God.
the water.
Yes.
It just didn't seem like a whole lot of success, did it, if you were looking out?
And they were walking on water, literally.
Right, that's when you know God has a sense
I
of
don't know
humor.
that I have not had anything like the water's parting, but when those rough places of life, you know, I'm sure they looked at that water and they never ever thought it'd part. And I think that that's how God has come to pull me out, not in a way that I could see, but it happened in unexpected ways. And so, you know, nothing dramatic except to me, or us, when we were delivered.
Well, it was a personal God. You know, He was there for you when you needed it. And those people, the Israelites, had to feel that this was a personal God. They actually heard their plea, you know, save us from this. Anyone else?
I know now that, you know, I didn't realize it then after my divorce, and of course, when somebody suggested that I do this pastoral work and be a pastoral assistant, I'm like, I was like Moses, oh God, I can't do that. I don't. But for some reason I prayed about it, and he was with me through it. But it wasn't only that. I don't think I would have been down here with caring for my grandchild had I not had that divorce, because my ex-husband would have never left his Fort Dodge and Grandchi. He loved barbershopping. He would have never left that. And so God is faithful to you, and He carried me through when I'm down here, and He has carried me through. But you see things later, how He has carried you through and been right there for you.
Yes, and helped you make some changes that you didn't think you could make at the time, I'm sure.
Right.
Like you teaching this morning, you're an excellent teacher, and you can teach anything you choose. And now maybe you know it.
It's always preparation.
Well, yeah.
That's
When my ex left with 2 kids, there were lots of not good things about it, but one of my favorite memories is as I was loading up to move from Virginia back to Kansas, and some good friends of mine were helping, and as I was getting in the car, in the van, ready to leave, this one crazy guy went out in front of the van and just laid down in the street. Like, no, you can't really go. Which was just enough craziness to make us be able to laugh instead of cry. And we got in the car, and the other grace from God was that my son and I could actually listen to the same music on the way. Because we were in different vehicles. It wouldn't have worked otherwise. But lots of little pieces that put all that together to make it happen.
You know, I really like that you shared that, because I think that when you have negative feelings about things that come up, we need to honor that, You know, that no that he had, don't go, and, you know, I'm going to stop you from going. Just like Moses, you know, no, I'm not going to do this. You can show me all this burning bush falderah you want, but I'm not going to do it. We need to honor our no, our resistance. You know, we do need to honor it. But then take that resistance that we have to make the change and say, okay, how can I make this a positive experience? What can be positive about it? Like, Jane? Helen. I'm still getting names. Helen, for instance, you know, it was probably not a good experience to lose your husband. You know, leave your husband. That was probably something you resisted doing, yes. But you made it a positive experience. And that is, it was a positive relationship with your daughter and with your granddaughter. And for you too, positive experience with your son being able to listen to the same music. That's an accomplishment. So I think it's important that we honor that negative feeling that we have. Don't try to say, oh, I shouldn't feel this way, or, you know, I mean, that's a legitimate feeling that we have, but God is there to get us through.
Carolyn, isn't that part of giving up and giving it to God when we say, I can't do this? And when we reach that point, then maybe we're more open to giving it to God and being open to a way than if we think, I can figure this out.
Oh, yeah, because we don't have all the resources. I mean, it comes from all over. The support, the spiritual support comes out from all over the place. And when you're open to that, then other people help you along the way. For instance, with your husband when he died. I'm sure there were other people that helped you.
Well, there were a lot of people around me, but most of them were so depressed that I was literally carrying them.
Okay.
And it was an awesome experience that I will never feel again. But it's just like they were so down that I couldn't be there with them. You know.
Right, you knew you couldn't go on if you stayed where they were.
If I stayed where they were, I couldn't go on.
Right, okay. So maybe that was some old spiritual support that you had, maybe? Maybe a grandmother or a mother or father, someone who really said, you can do this.
Yes, my grandmother was very instrumental in that.
Okay, yeah. You can get over these challenging things.
I was 59 when one lunch the guy I was married to said, this is it. And we'd been married 40 years. To say that I was shocked and devastated, of course I was. For the next, I've forgotten the exact number, but it was at least 5 or 6 weeks. Once a week, I received a note from somebody, a note of encouragement, and they didn't even know what I was going through.
Oh, interesting.
That, you know, and in a sense, this affirmation of me as a person was probably what I needed the most then, and it was most from the church, but different people. Some I knew better than others. And we didn't, you know, announce it right at the beginning. And so for me, that was a parting of the sea. The affirmation of somebody cared about me as a person, as I was, when I was feeling pretty snarky.
Mm-hmm. Like you didn't care about yourself maybe at that point. Mm-hmm. If he doesn't care about me, why would I? Yeah. Now your experience with the airplane. Yeah. Who was it that gave you spiritual support there?
Repeat your question again, please.
Who gave you spiritual support in that airplane?
I'm glad you asked that question. Now, don't think me weird, but I have an interest in angels.
Angels? Okay.
As I was praying, Lord, get us back on the ground okay. The man next to me, while I was praying, says, don't worry about it. I know the man, he's a I believe he's a pilot, former pilot, and he'll get us back okay. Don't worry. And he himself was perfectly calm. Here I'm sitting next to the aisle, I'm scared to death. But this man to my left was sort of angelic to me. He didn't even know I was praying. He just says, don't worry about it. The guy up front is a former pilot, and he'll get us back out on the ground. Okay.
Yeah, so the angels maybe are people that are in your everyday life.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, let's see. So anyhow, they got across the sea, the seas parted, they got across the sea, and what do you think they happened? They broke out in celebration. You know, they have been victorious over this really challenging situation, and they broke out in celebration. So could I have somebody read Exodus 15:20 to 21?
And Miriam the prophetess, the sister of Aaron, took a timbrel and led the women in dances. And Miriam sang this song, "Sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and rider have been drowned in the sea."
Alleluia. You know, she's going, we did it. And for the people that like football and basketball, I think it's basketball here in Kansas, I can hear you doing that. We beat them, you know, we beat Iowa, or we beat Wichita. You know, we did it. And it was kind of a military type of thing, you know. We have been strong enough, we've been able to fight enough. We have been able to overcome this. So it was kind of a military victory. Now, if you would see something like that today, if you would see somebody break out in song over some enemy that's defeated, and let's say the enemy was Osama bin Laden or Saddam Hussein, do you think we would have a common celebration song like that?
No, as a matter of fact, the opinion line has an opinion that they should have left them alive so we could get more information from them.
We didn't milk it for everything we could. It wasn't
Of
enough.
course, then on the other side, there's the cost of maintaining them to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. How about some other reactions about overcoming a military foe? Do you remember what Osama bin Laden did after the towers came down on 9/11? He definitely celebrated.
And they were in the streets celebrating,
Yeah.
his followers.
Yes.
I thought last night we went to the movie, and also I heard it on NPR, and the name of the book is, I'll get here in a second, but anyway, I would really recommend very strongly going to the movie on, it's called The Red Tails.
Oh, okay.
And it has to do with race, and I think one of the things we always lose out on, and you pointed out very well on the maps, that the people came from Africa, and last night you would see, and most people in your mind you don't think about this, I believe, but anyway, the fact is that Jesus, Africa is related to, and the pilot had a picture of a black Jesus.
Oh.
And I think that's something that we don't think about as we, in our own history, but it's, again, about dealing with the book on dealing with angels. The fact is that, let me pull up here, the name of the book is The Better Angels of Our Nature. And at this particular time, this gentleman has done quite a bit of research that we're doing. There's less violence in the world right now than ever has been. That's an interesting, and he's pretty well documented that, but I haven't read the book yet, but it's very interesting that when you're talking about what's going on with the boys that were killed, the firstborn, and right now, so something to think about, but I just thought I'd bring that up.
Well, Charles, you brought up a couple of good points. One is, of course, the idea of race, and how race is one of the things that we have fought throughout our history here in the United States with the Civil War, and now we have a black, semi-black president, mulatto, I think is the proper term. And so that's something that, it's a battle I think that we're fighting internally. You know, what are those racial differences and what do they actually mean to us? And how do we overcome that personally? The difference that we see, are we really that different from those people? We certainly oppressed the black people when they came to the United States. And if this were an all-black church, they would be really relating to the Israelites here, because they went through this period of slavery, and they had a ton of songs that they sang as a means of expressing their joy and just being alive, I think, and of being able to overcome their oppressors. And so that's an ongoing thing, the racial issue. Okay, now next, let's go to Moses' Song of Celebration. Moses also had a Song of Celebration, and that was in 15:1 through 3. Let's read Moses' Song of Celebration. How are we doing on time? We're almost done.
1 through 3.
1 through 3, Moses' Song of Celebration.
Then Moses and the Israelites sang this song to the Lord. I will sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. Horse and rider he has thrown into the sea. The Lord is my strength and my might, and he has become my salvation. This is my God, and I will praise him. My Father's God, and I will exalt him.
Okay, so it's a military type of thing, and he's talking about they were saved by this military action. We usually think of ourselves as being peace lovers, but it actually took some military action to be successful here. The next one is 15:22 through 27. Now, they got across, and they are now going into Shur. This is the way to Shur, and this is the desert. They're going into the desert, and they're going to have 40 years in the desert. So let's read 15:22.
Then Moses led Israel from the Red Sea, and they went into the desert of Shur. For 3 days they traveled in the desert without finding water. When they came to Marah, they could not drink its water because it was bitter. That is why the place is called Marah. So the people grumbled against Moses, saying, "What are we to drink?" Then Moses cried out to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a piece of wood. He threw it into the water, and the water became sweet. There the Lord made a decree and a law for them, and there he tested them.
Okay, so they get across, and they find out, okay, we've been saved from this crisis, but we need an ongoing relationship with God, because we're going to have continuing problems, and we're going to need to have a way to solve these problems on a continuous basis. We're out of time today. Hopefully we can talk about this a little bit more sometime in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
Okay.
Great job, Carol. Great job.
Very good.
Larry calls it Moses and the Krabby Tree.
Yes. I heard that. I heard that. Yes. Someone turn this off. Really? I don't know if I got tired of
The other one didn't get roasted.
Well, I'm sorry.